All right, let's dive deep into the life of Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
I think a lot of people, when they hear the name Gandhi, they think, oh yeah, I know about him. But
Just the surface level.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some of the details and the nuances of his life and philosophy that I think will surprise a lot of people.
Absolutely.
We have a really great article from history.com.
That's a good one.
It's a really good one that kind of lays things out.
Provides a lot of insight.
So, born in 1869 in India, and eventually, of course, becomes this pivotal figure in India's independence movement.
Leading the way with nonviolent resistance.
Right, which is, I think, something that a lot of people don't necessarily think about is like the long game of that.
A powerful approach.
Yeah, but he doesn't just start there, right?
No, not at all.
He has this really interesting journey.
A lot of twists and turns
Yeah.
and transformations.
So, early life in India, devout Hindu family,
Very traditional upbringing.
and then, boom, off to London to study law.
Right.
That's a big shift.
That's a huge leap.
What do you think that was like for him?
Well, you have to imagine this young man, steeped in Indian culture and tradition, suddenly immersed in the heart of the British Empire,
Right.
exposed to these new ideas, new ways of thinking. It must have been a real,
A culture shock.
culture shock. Exactly.
And also just like seeing the different ways that the world was structured.
And the power dynamics at play.
Yeah.
I mean, London at that time was the center of global power. And for him to see that firsthand,
Yeah.
it must have had a profound impact.
I mean, it seems like a pattern for him, though.
How so?
These kind of big leaps.
I see what you mean.
Because then from London, he ends up in South Africa working as a lawyer. And that's where things get really interesting, right?
That's where the real turning point happens.
Yeah.
Because that's where he encounters this just blatant, appalling discrimination.
I was reading that and just thinking, like,
It's hard to fathom.
I can't even imagine.
The level of prejudice.
What was it like in South Africa at that time?
I mean, late 19th century South Africa, it was this melting pot of cultures, but also this battleground of ideologies.
Oh, wow.
Colonialism was at its peak. Racial segregation was deeply entrenched.
So it was like just baked into the system.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, the article highlights a few really jarring incidents.
Oh, yeah.
Like being asked to remove his turban in court simply because of his ethnicity.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, those kinds of everyday humiliations.
That's unbelievable.
It's hard to even imagine how he must have felt.
Yeah, and to not, like, become cynical or disillusioned or bitter.
Right. You'd think it would make someone
Yeah.
just completely jaded.
Yeah, but it seems like it almost had the opposite effect, right?
In a way, yes.
It's like this crucible where his philosophy of Satyagraha emerges.
Yeah, truth and firmness.
I mean, it's not just passive resistance, right?
No, it's much more than that.
There's something very active about it.
It's about confronting injustice head on. But with this unwavering adherence to truth and nonviolence.
It's almost like appealing to the better nature or the conscience.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Sorry, appealing to their conscience, their sense of humanity,
Yeah.
trying to awaken that within them.
There's this one incident, and I think everyone's kind of heard this story, where he's on a train and he gets thrown out of first class for refusing to give up his seat to a European passenger.
That's a powerful image.
It's so symbolic.
It really is.
Well, why?
It's not just about a seat on a train.
Right.
It's about challenging the entire system of racial hierarchy
The whole structure.
that the British Empire had imposed.
Yeah.
It's about saying, no, I will not accept this. I deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
So what does he do? I mean, does he just like launch into Satyagraha full blown at that point?
Well, it's not immediate, but it's a catalyst for
Cool.
sure.
Okay.
He starts mobilizing the Indian community.
Yeah.
In 1906, he leads this massive campaign of civil disobedience against these discriminatory registration laws.
So he's not messing around.
No, he's not.
This is serious business.
This is a full-blown movement.
Thousands of Indians were imprisoned.
Flogged, even shot at.
I mean, they really risked everything.
They did. They put their lives on the line
Wow.
for the cause.
And this goes on for 8 years.
8 long years.
Wow. Yeah,
It's a
well,
testament to his leadership
Yeah,
and the unwavering belief of the people who followed him.
that's amazing.
And it worked.
They got results.
They forced the South African government to the negotiating table.
Wow.
It was a long and arduous struggle, but they made progress.
So even against something so ingrained and powerful as that system.
As deeply rooted as prejudice can be,
Yeah.
Satyagraha showed its power.
It's almost like these South African campaigns were a testing ground for him.
A training ground.
Yeah, for what he would later do in India.
You could say that.
What do you think were the key lessons he learned during those years?
I think he learned the importance of discipline, of nonviolence. Even in the face of brutality, he learned the power of collective action, of mobilizing people.
Right.
And I think he learned how to be strategic, how to negotiate, how to leverage his position to achieve his goals.
And all of this, of course, will come into play when he returns to India,
Oh, absolutely.
which is where we'll pick up next time.
I can't wait.
Yeah, this is already so fascinating.
We're just getting started.
All right, so last time we left off with Gandhi returning to India in 1914.
Fresh from his Satyagraha pains in South Africa.
Yeah, and now he's turning his attention towards India's independence.
A much bigger stage.
But I found it interesting that he initially supported the British in World War I.
Oh, yeah, that was a bit controversial.
It seemed kind of, I don't
A
know.
little hypocritical, maybe?
Yeah.
To some people,
What
definitely.
was the thinking there?
Well, he believed in showing loyalty to the empire, hoping for reciprocal fairness in return.
So a bit of a gamble.
A strategic move, you could say. He also made it very clear that his support was conditional
On what?
on the British addressing India's grievances.
Okay, so he wasn't giving them a blank check.
No, not at all.
He was saying, okay, I'll support you in this, but you got to meet us halfway.
Exactly.
So what finally pushed things over the edge?
The Rollout Acts of 1919.
What were those?
These acts gave the British government these sweeping powers to suppress dissent.
Basically, they could do whatever they wanted.
Pretty much indefinite detention without trial.
Wow.
So you can imagine how that went over with the Indians who had just loyally supported Britain during the war.
I mean, talk about a slap in the face.
Yeah, it was a major betrayal in their eyes.
So this is what sparks the organized campaign of passive resistance in 1919.
Yeah, Gandhi called for a nationwide hardle, a day of prayer and fasting, a complete shutdown of everything.
Wow, total shutdown.
It was a powerful display of unity and defiance.
But tragically, this period is also marked by the Amritsar massacre.
Ah, yes, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre.
I remember learning about it in school, but
It's one of those events that just stays with you.
it's hard to even fathom.
British troops firing on a peaceful gathering of unarmed civilians.
Just horrific.
General Dyer, the officer in charge, ordered his troops to fire into a crowd gathered in this walled garden,
Hundreds were killed.
and thousands injured.
It's hard to imagine the horror and the chaos.
It was a turning point in the Indian independence movement.
It must have just shattered any remaining illusions about the British.
Oh, absolutely.
So how does Gandhi respond to this?
He was deeply shaken, of course, but he urged Indians to maintain their commitment to nonviolence.
Even in the face of this.
He argued that resorting to violence would only play into the hands of the British.
So it just strengthened his resolve.
It solidified his belief in Satyagraha as the only path to true freedom.
Wow, it's incredible how he held on to that principle.
He was unwavering in his commitment to nonviolence.
But, it makes you wonder, was his relationship with the British always adversarial?
That's a good question.
Because sometimes it seems like he's cooperating, other times he's fiercely opposing them.
It was a complex dance, for sure.
So how did he navigate that?
Strategically,
Okay, I like that.
he was a master strategist.
He knew when to push and when to pull back.
Exactly.
The History.com article mentions his focus on economic independence for India.
And his advocacy for Khadar,
What's Khadar?
homespun cloth.
Okay, so what's the significance of that?
Well, Gandhi encouraged Indians to spin their own yarn, weave their own cloth, boycott British textiles.
Okay, so it's about more than just clothes.
Oh, yeah, much more.
It's a statement.
It's a symbol of self-reliance, of resistance.
Right. It's like saying, we don't need you, we can do this ourselves.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming their own destiny.
And then there's the Salt March of 1930.
Ah, the Salt March, one of Gandhi's most iconic moves.
241 miles just to make salt?
It sounds crazy, right?
But I know there's more to it than that.
The salt tax was a symbol of British oppression.
Okay.
Salt, a basic necessity, was a government monopoly.
So they controlled it,
Complete?
and Indians couldn't make their own.
Nope, they had to buy it from the British at inflated prices.
It's like squeezing every last penny out of them.
It was a burden on the poorest Indians, especially.
So Gandhi decides to walk to the Arabian Sea and make salt illegally.
With thousands of followers,
What a powerful image.
it captured the imagination of the world.
And how did the British react?
With brute force, as you might expect.
Arrests.
Oh yeah, Gandhi and tens of thousands of his followers.
But the damage was done, right?
The Salt March had already achieved its goal,
It exposed the British on a global stage.
and it generated sympathy and support for the Indian independence movement.
Gandhi was a master of symbolism, wasn't he?
He knew how to use it to his advantage.
But was everyone on board with his approach?
Not everyone, no.
Really?
As the movement gained momentum, internal division started to emerge.
Like what?
Well, some leaders, particularly Muslim leaders like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, they questioned the pace of progress, whether Gandhi's methods would actually lead to full independence.
So even within the movement itself, there were different opinions on the best way forward.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how even a movement with such a clear goal can still have these internal tensions.
It's a reminder that India was an incredibly diverse country with a long history of religious and social divisions.
Right. It wasn't a monolithic entity.
No, not at all.
And these tensions would ultimately play a crucial role in the events leading up to independence and partition.
Which is a whole other story.
And speaking of tensions, Gandhi wasn't afraid to challenge social inequalities within India as well.
You're talking about his work with the so-called untouchables.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Gandhi was a staunch advocate for social justice.
So he was fighting on multiple fronts.
It was.
He saw the interconnectedness of these issues.
Absolutely. He challenged the caste system that had plagued India for centuries.
It's amazing to see him fighting for both political freedom and social justice.
He recognized that true freedom meant freedom for all.
But then, of course, World War II breaks out.
And throws everything into chaos.
How did that impact the movement?
That's where we'll pick things up next time.
Okay, because things are about to get even more complicated.
Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
So we left off with World War II looming.
Changing the game entirely.
Yeah, how did this global conflict affect Gandhi and the movement?
Well, the war really shifted the landscape, put India's fate in a whole new light.
So what does Gandhi do?
He's leading the Indian National Congress again, right? And he's facing this incredible dilemma.
On one hand, India's freedom,
which has always been the goal.
but on the other, his deep abhorrence of violence.
A core principle for him.
It seems like an impossible situation.
It was a delicate balancing act.
So what's his play?
He urges the British to withdraw from India.
Just like that.
He promises non-violent cooperation in the war effort in return.
Interesting. So like a we'll help you if you help us kind of deal.
Exactly. He believed that a free India could truly contribute to the fight against fascism.
Makes sense, but I'm guessing the British weren't too keen on just giving up control.
You guessed right. They refused his offer.
Um,
They imprisoned the entire Congress leadership.
Wow.
They thought they could silence the movement, but it backfired.
It seems like every time they tried to suppress Gandhi and his followers, it just made them stronger.
It fueled the fire, gave them more determination.
So the war ends. What happens then?
The world's changing, the British Empire's crumbling.
You can't hold on forever.
Exactly. They finally agreed to grant India independence in 1947.
That's it. They finally achieved their goal.
But it came at a cost.
The partition, right?
The division of British India into two states, India and Pakistan.
A deeply divisive issue.
And Gandhi was completely against it.
I mean, he always dreamed of a united India.
Hindus and Muslims coexisting peacefully.
But it wasn't that simple, was it?
No. The political reality was far more complex. Tensions were rising. Violence was escalating.
So, despite Gandhi's efforts, partition happens.
It triggered one of the largest mass migrations in history.
Millions displaced.
Countless lives lost in the communal violence.
It's tragic that India's hard-won freedom was accompanied by such bloodshed.
A heartbreaking turn of events, especially for Gandhi.
I mean, he dedicated his life to peace and unity.
It had to be devastating for him.
But he didn't just give up, did he?
No, even amidst the chaos, he remained a beacon of hope.
What did he do?
He appealed for peace, traveled to affected areas, urged people to lay down their arms.
He never stopped believing in the power of nonviolence.
Even when faced with such horrific violence.
But tragically, his life was cut short.
On January 30, 1948, he was assassinated.
By a Hindu fanatic.
Who blamed him for the partition.
It's hard to grasp.
This man who led a nation to freedom through nonviolent resistance.
Killed by hatred and violence.
It's a stark reminder that darkness can extinguish even the brightest light.
But even in death, his legacy lives on.
His philosophy of Satyagraha continues to inspire movements around the world.
It's incredible to think about the impact he had.
A man born in a small town in India.
Changing the course of history.
Showing the world the power of truth, nonviolence, and unwavering belief.
His story is both inspiring and heartbreaking.
It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, hope and change are possible.
But we have to be willing to fight for them peacefully and persistently.
And never lose faith in the goodness of humanity.
What a journey it's been exploring the life of Mahatma Gandhi.
Truly a remarkable figure.
It's been enlightening, inspiring, and definitely thought-provoking.
And hopefully it's given us all something to reflect on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a difference in your own unique way.